Let's dive into one of the most powerful, most intense stories from all of Norse myth, the Hellwraith Brynhildr, or Brynhildr's Ride to Hell. Now, this isn't just some gloomy story about death, oh no. It is a final, fiery defense of a life lived on your own terms, even when you're staring down ultimate judgment. So picture this. You're on a spectral road, and it's winding its way into the cold, dark mists of the underworld. This is the Hell Road, and it's way more than just a path. It's like the final courtroom, where your entire life gets put on trial, your legacy is weighed, and your story gets set in stone forever. This is it, the ultimate moment of accountability. And that, right there, is the heart of this story. What happens when the person on trial doesn't beg for mercy, doesn't plead their case, but instead stands their ground and defends every single choice they ever made, no matter how bloody? What we have here is a truly epic confrontation. On one side, you've got a giantess, who's basically acting as a cosmic prosecutor, ready to throw the book at our defendant. And on the other side, the fallen Valkyrie, Brynhildr, riding toward her doom with her head held high. This is her last stand, folks. You can see the two sides of the coin right here. The prosecution's case is pretty simple. Brynhildr is a bringer of ruin, a blood-stained murderess. But her defense? Brynhildr sees herself as she's always been, a driver of victory, a sovereign soul in charge of her own destiny. So, who is she really? Well, that's the whole battle, isn't it? A battle over the narrative of her life. So, where does she even start her defense? Well, she doesn't make excuses. Not for a second. Instead, she points the finger straight at the top, at the gods. She argues that this whole tragedy wasn't her fault, because it was a rigged game from the very beginning. And this quote just nails her whole attitude, right? She is not sorry. And why should she be? From her point of view, everything she did was a direct reaction to a cruel fate that was forced on her. You could say she's claiming she just brought a little fire to a world that had already left her out in the cold. Okay, so let's break down her evidence against the gods. It all kicks off with Odin's decree. He pricks her with a sleep thorn, and bam, in that one single moment, he strips her of her Valkyrie status, her power, her very ability to choose. She says that from that point on, her mortal life wasn't really a life at all. It was a punishment. She argues that all the tragedy that came later was sealed right then and there. But, it wasn't just the gods pulling the strings from on high. Brynhildr's defense moves from the divine down to the mortal world, and she details this whole conspiracy of men and magic that basically trapped her with no way out. And she lays it all out, making it clear this wasn't just a string of bad luck. This was a setup. Exhibit A. You've got Queen Grimhald's sorcery, twisting everyone's love and loyalty. Exhibit B. This insane shape-shifting fraud, where another man pretends to be her true love, Sigurd. Exhibit C, sacred oaths, just shattered. And all the while, that cursed ring, Anvur out, was humming in the background, like a silent architect of all this sorrow. She even goes into the details of just how sacred the promise was that was broken. She describes 8 nights she spent with the man she thought was her hero, separated only by his famous sword, Grom, which he laid between them as a cold steel witness to their vow of chastity and honor. The violation of this promise, she argues, wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a crime against the cosmic order itself. And this brings us to her most controversial claim. Brynhildr takes her final bloody act of vengeance, getting her beloved Sigurd killed. And she reframes it. It wasn't murder, she says. It was a necessary act to restore her very soul. Now, to really get where she's coming from, we have to talk about this Old Norse concept, semd. This isn't just about your reputation. This is your core integrity, your personal dignity, the very essence of who you are. And in this worldview, losing your semd, that wasn't just shameful. It was a fate considered far, far worse than death. So when you think about it like that, her defense becomes, well, chillingly logical. Orchestrating Sigurd's death wasn't just an act of jealousy. In her mind, it was a bloody tax. It was the terrible, terrible price she had to pay to reclaim the dignity, the semd, that had been stolen from her. And this is where her defense hits its absolute climax. She's about to take all the shame and ruin the giantess is throwing at her and completely flip the script, turning her own damnation into her greatest victory. And this is her final, stunning proclamation, a total mic drop.
She basically tells the giantess that the rest of the world can live in sorrow. She couldn't care less, because she and her hero, Sigurd, will be reunited in death, and they will never be parted again. In just one sentence, she completely rejects all earthly judgment.
Look at how she totally redefines everything here. What the world sees as a shameful exile to the underworld, she reclaims as her own triumphal procession. The funeral pyre where she and Sigurd are burned together, to her, that's a wedding bed. She is literally rewriting her own ending, on her own terms. So, what's the big takeaway from this incredible parable? What's the point of it all? Ultimately, the Ride of Brynhildr is a story about the raw power of self-definition, even when you're facing down the gods and death itself. See, to the Norse, one of the most important things you could ever have was your domer. This is your story, your reputation, the final judgment passed on you after you die. This was the only real kind of immortality there was. And in this trial on the road to hell, Brynhildr is fighting tooth and nail to control her own domer. She also talks about her urlog, which is her personal destiny. Now, she isn't claiming she escaped her fate, not at all. Instead, she fiercely declares that she met it, she fulfilled it, but she did it on her terms, with her head held high. She absolutely refused to be a passive victim in her own tragedy. And that's really the heart of it all. Brynhildr doesn't win her case by proving she was innocent. She wins by proving that her will was sovereign and absolutely unbreakable. Her legacy is secured not because she was blameless, but because she refused to let anyone, not man, not giant, not even a god, write her final chapter for her. And that leaves all of us with a really fascinating question to chew on. When it's all said and done, what truly defines a legacy? Is it the story that other people tell about you? Or is it the one you tell about yourself, with so much power and conviction that the world simply has no choice but to listen?